This one is a hell of a topic. Hello, welcome to Collector Creations. In these videos, I talk about the movies and the movies. Anyway, silly accents aside, let's talk about movies that have several cuts. I probably have touched on this topic before, but I kind of wanted to look at it in a different way because I wanted to watch Touch of Evil. This Touch of Evil, the 50s film, 58, with, what do you call it, that Orson of the Wells guy? I don't know if you know who he is anyway. I guess I'm working backwards with his stuff because I watched FFake last week and this week I'm doing Touch of Evil. It comes with several editions of the film, which, as you can see on the back, ignore the limited edition factor, it comes with the theatrical version, which is 95 minutes, the preview version, which is 109 minutes, and the restored cut from 1998, which is 110 minutes, technically 111, across two UHD discs. Now, of course, you're probably saying, oh, Julian, why the hell is Touch of Evil going to be your case study for today? And I have the backhanded comment of, shut the fuck up, I decided to watch this film 7 times in a row and bailed on my second viewing. Yeah, it turns out I've got better uses of my time by, just watching anything else. Probably. I mean, I do like the film. It is a stunning film. It is a gorgeous restoration. It looks amazing. It sounds amazing. The plan, which is why I want to cover this, was that I was going to choose a movie that I would watch 7 days in a row. And it would be the exact same film, and I was like, do I do a 90-minute film, 80-minute, a film that's an easy runtime, so it's not too disturbed if I've got people over, or if I'm short for time because I've got to go to work, or I've come from work and I have to go socialize, whatever. Like today. Today is Tuesday, I had work, I've come home, I've filmed all my mail stuff, and I'm going to go out and watch The First Omen. Initially, my Tuesday plan was to get home, have a shower, make myself look pretty, and then watch the third cut of... Well, actually, Touch of Evil for a third time. I was going to watch the theatrical cut with a commentary, because at least then I could get that over and done with, and then do other stuff. Or even potentially do that, and then go out and watch The Omen. But I decided yesterday, while I was watching the second cut of the movie, there's not 7 cuts, there's just 4 commentaries. I was going to do the commentaries as well. And I did compare it with Dawn of the Dead, but we'll get into that. I was watching the restored cut, and while I'm watching, I'm like, man, it's really fun watching these extra scenes, seeing what it adds to it and whatever. Most of the time I'm like, this just feels like repeated information, because once you've seen it once, you feel like you've seen it all before. And then I kind of realized, it dawned on me, oh, maybe watching this 7 times in a row isn't the best idea in such succession, because I watched it the day before. I don't do this thing where I will watch a film and then the next day watch it again. I know of people I follow on Letterboxd who will watch a film and within months watch it a second time. Sometimes just to get a better perspective, maybe they're watching a different cut, maybe they're watching a different restoration. Or maybe even just with friends or something, you know? Some different pretense, maybe it's just they want to re-examine the film now that they've sat on it for 3 months. And I was like, man, 3 months between watching the same film, that's ridiculous. I could never do that. I just know the film too well to do that. But it turns out 24 hours is even worse of an idea. Not even 24 hours, kind of 24 hours. And to be fair, in between this, I still did watch The Omen and Damien the Omen 2, and then watch the restored cut. So it wasn't like I was just doing one film a day. I was going out of my way to make sure I watched it after I watched other movies. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, see, if I was watching the same exact film 7 times in a row with no different edits, no different, nothing else. I'm not doing commentaries, I'm not doing, isolated score tracks, I'm not doing anything experimental. I'm just watching the same flick in the exact same manner 7 different days in a row with different appreciations of how goddamn tired I am from A, watching this film 7 days in a row, and B, just life. Man, I'm tired. And so I'm watching Touch of Evil, I'm watching it for the second time, I'm like, look, this is good, but all the stuff that I saw in the theatrical cut, which is still here, I have no connection with. I'm not emotionally invested in it because I saw it yesterday. And that was my immediate realization of, maybe you shouldn't watch an extended cut. Maybe you watch, not in general, but maybe I shouldn't watch an extended cut or a director's cut or a different version of a movie immediately. So hence the question of, when do you watch an extended cut? When do you watch a restored cut or director's cut or something else? And I think, and this could even be simply you've got a DVD copy of the version or a Blu-ray, and then there's a new 4K UHD, or there's a brand new restoration that really brings some life to the film. And you're like, hey, I just watched this film last week, but hey, I'll buy this new 4K and watch it, a week later. At least for that, there's the quality of like, oh, I'm able to look at the film and see this new color grading and this new restoration and get this new appreciation for it as a technical thing and be like, wow, this looks fantastic. This really does make the film come to life. All that kind of stuff. That's the only exception to the rule, I feel like, because outside of that, it's like, maybe I could do once a week. I could watch the same film and do a different cut, or if I'm getting paid to review an actual disc like Touch of Evil and be like, hey, I gotta listen to every single audio commentary, let's bang this out every single, If it was something like that, then maybe. But I'm like, am I gonna, if I've never seen Touch of Evil before, and I'm like, oh, I'm being paid to review this, I've got to watch every single cut of the movie, and then watch every single commentary, am I really gonna do that? Then watch all the special features, and then read the book? Like, sure, if I'm getting paid, probably, But given I'm not, I'm like, do I really want to waste my time doing that? And I say waste because I feel like I'm wasting my time. There's like 25 minutes the difference, actually not even, 15 minutes the difference between the extended cut and, well, the restored cut, I have to emphasize that, and the theatrical cut for Touch of Evil. And the main difference is not just the opening, where they've removed the bouncy Mancini score and the opening credits, which distracts you from the technical craft, but also, by removing that, it allows you to live in the world and understand the world, and distracts you from the fact there's a bomb in the car. It's that movie. And I studied this scene in university, and I remembered the whole entire scene. So watching it there on Sunday night, being like, I'm like, oh, it's this movie. I thought it was a goddamn Hitchcock the whole fucking time. It's a goddamn Orson Welles flick. Who'd have thought? I should have known. That's on me. But yeah, watching it the second time, yeah, the opening is different. It felt different. I didn't really realize it. I realized that there was no opening credits, because usually I like to post on Snapchat, hey look, I'm watching Touch of Evil, look, it says on the screen, or I do that on Instagram. If you see my stories on Instagram, I try to do a little zoom in on the, the boomerang effect as they have it on Instagram for when the title of the movie comes up. I find that to be fun, just to show people what I'm watching, that kind of jazz. But they didn't have it this time. The credits for the movie don't come into the end of the movie. Literally, the end credits is Touch of Evil, and then it tells you, actually, I think it just says the main three names. It flashes one, flashes the second, flashes the third, then says Touch of Evil. Crazy how it's not called A Touch of Evil or The Touch of Evil. It's just Touch of Evil. It's kind of cute, in a way. The original book is called Badge of Evil, which I think kind of works a little bit better. It's a bit more on the nose, but still, there's an element to it where I was watching it, I'm thinking, there doesn't feel like that much difference. I'm watching the exact same film play out the exact same way, and then suddenly I'd be watching a scene and be like, this is new. Because also the quality of the picture looks a bit worse for wear, because obviously it's not the theatrical run print, it's a in the vault kind of print, restored into it, oh, this is the best available footage, and this is what they've used. And to be fair, there's one really great scene which does actually emphasize a whole part with Janet Leigh's character and how she got to the motel, and it's really necessary that they vaguely mention later on in the scene through exposition. All the extra scenes you get are just reiterated through exposition, but it's a noir. You're meant to have that, like the reiteration of like discussions and stuff. There's, oh, main character gets to this place, cut to theatrical cut. They're in that place and another character comes by, how did you get in here? Well, if you saw the earlier scene in the restored cut, you'd see how he got in there. But instead the main character says, oh, well, this place is open to the public. He's allowed to be in there. And it's like, oh, okay. So you're getting different perspectives. It's not just he's in there because his friend has let him in and is like, hey, this place is open to the public just in case anyone tells you different, whatever. There's none of that. He shows them the place, tells them what he's looking for, and then he leaves. And then cut to 5 minutes later, the bad guy comes in and is like, hey, what are you doing? And how did you get in here? We've been looking for you all day, all that kind of stuff. So it's like, that also juxtaposes time, how long he's been in there, the amount of research he's done. So there's a lot of juxtapositions in all these extra scenes, which is really kind of interesting to really think about. But again, sure, I have noticed that immediately because I've watched it the next day. I'm mostly antagonizing this idea because I wanted to do 7 different days in a row with 3 different cuts and 4 different commentaries. An alternative film is Dawn of the Dead. It's the same thing where I've watched the theatrical cut twice now, once in cinema, once on the 4K restoration, and then I watched the UHD disc to watch the Cannes cut, which is my favourite cut of the film. I have yet to watch the Argento cut, but that's another film where I could have watched the 3 different cuts of that, and then the 4 different commentaries. There's I think 2 for the theatrical, 1 for the Cannes cut, and 1 for the Argento cut. You also get different music, different effects for that movie, and that's what I feel like is a better movie to watch 7 times in a row. The only problem is I've watched it so recently, especially because I watched the Cannes cut last year and the theatrical cut the year before, and the theatrical cut I'm pretty sure the year before that, because I watched it in cinema not knowing I'd ever be able to watch it again. Thank you, Second Sight. But yeah, so it's one of those things where it's maybe that's a film where it's I was watching that, and this is months having seen the Cannes cut. I was watching it months after having seen the theatrical cut, and there are parts where it feels like, hey, there feels like there's a bit more fleshed out details here. There's something extra to this film. And of course, you can look it up. The movie censorship website, that kind of stuff will tell you, here are the extra scenes, here is how they are paced out, here's the information that they tell you. So you can get an explanation without watching the whole film. And, of course, watching the whole film, months after watching the theatrical cut, I'm I actually kind of like this more, because my criticism of the theatrical cut is I don't relate enough to the characters. There's not enough development for them. But then you watch the Cannes cut, you realize, hey, there's that development that I really wanted. It's there. All the stuff I wanted is there in the extended version. I'm mind blown. It's one of those elements where you can watch Blade Runner with the final cut and stuff like that, or its director's cut compared to the theatrical cut. That's another one where you could watch that 5 different times because it's a work print cut. Mother of God. It's one of those things of, if you're a hardcore fan and you can even if you can just kind of view a movie in the simple aspect of watching the same thing every single day and just to get each different cut down, whether it's 2 different cuts or 3 different cuts or 4 different cuts or 5 different cuts. And the idea being there that you can watch this and just be I just want to, because I love this film, I want to be in this world, and I want to experience the different cuts. Does it tire you out? Does it annoy you? I don't know. I feel with a different film, again, maybe with Dawn of the Dead, I might be actually, because the music cuts and cues are different, because the editing is different, because there's different elements to that, it might be a better one to watch in quick succession. And maybe I have the dedication to do that. But maybe in, 3-4 months' time, I might revisit Touch of Evil to watch the preview cut. I might never watch the preview cut. I might just leave it there on the Blu-ray and just be fuck it. I might never watch the Argento cut for Dawn of the Dead. I want to. It's on my bucket list. I would like to watch that version of the movie to get the no comedy, no nonsense, just strictly horror, but with the Goblin score, which is not in the Cannes cut. So it's again, there are different elements that you don't get. Blade Runner is a great example of that, where the theatrical cut has it's a different runtime, a different ending. You get, the whole Shining ending that they have. You get the voiceover narration, but then you get the director's cut. Appropriate ending, gets rid of the narration, makes it more moody, makes it more environmental and atmospheric. And then you get the final cut, which just fleshes out those last final touches, and also maybe just bats you over the head by saying a Deckard's a replicant because you didn't dream about a unicorn. I get it, really. You made a film and you had a unicorn in it and you shoved it into this. We get it, okay? But then there's, again, that's an element of, I guess, a more artistic approach to looking at films. Do you want to watch that recut version immediately or wait a couple of months? Realistically, waiting a week is fine, because at least you've had time to breathe, to sit on the version you've seen, and then bam, let's watch the different one. It's fresh enough in your mind that you can be oh, I recognize this scene from the theatrical cut, but maybe you're still in the energy of it all. It's a fresh experience, but enough familiarity because you've seen it before, but all the new stuff is oh, okay, that's actually doing that. Interesting. That's an interesting detail I didn't know last time. That would have benefited the film. There are things like that where it fleshes out things more, or again, like Dawn of the Dead, recuts it and it just makes it a different experience. Or even, I should just say Blade Runner makes it a different goddamn experience. Yeah, I don't want to like impose rules. You can watch The Wicker Man all three cuts in one goddamn day if you really want to. You can watch the extended cuts of Lord of the Rings. What if you had that? Lord of the Rings trilogy. I watched the theatrical cut of the first one, the extended cut of the second one, and the theatrical cut of the third one. Are you going to do it like that, or are you just going to do extended trilogy, or original theatrical cut trilogy? That's also one of those things. But there are only 2 cuts per film for that. Like, there's not... I wouldn't say there's a lot of difference. There's enough difference. I'm well aware. I've watched both versions. I grew up watching the extended cut before I knew the theatrical cut even existed. But yeah, it's a... I think it's more of the factor of watching a film that has intended cuts. Again, like Blade Runner to some degree, where it's been re-edited to become better, if you prefer the better final cut, director's cut over the theatrical cut. Or it's something like Touch of Evil, where it's reconstructed to the director or the artist's original vision. Here it is in all its glory. Or it's something like, well, I think maybe Star Wars, how it's being recut, and you want the original version because you like the original version more over the CGI edits. Maybe it's Dawn of the Dead. Oh, I prefer the horror elements of this zombie film, so I want to watch the less commentary and goofy stuff, more horror, so I'm going to watch the Argento cut. Or, I want to hang out for characters more. Let's watch the extended cut, you know? But again, it could just be that artistic vision. Do you want what the director had initially in mind with maybe the director's or final cut, whatever it is labeled as? You know, are you going to watch Alien 3 and watch the assembly cut, which is a far superior cut, despite still not being a director's cut? Are you going to watch all the extended versions of the Alien films? Maybe you could do that for all 4 of them, for at least the first 4. Which is kind of a weird thing to think about in a way. Not really. Like, I've done that. I watched all 4 of them in their extended formats. I don't care for the Alien in its extended format, which is actually shorter, I know. The special edition version. I like its theatrical version. Aliens depends. I don't like the extra century turret stuff, but I like the stuff with her daughter. It thematically works better. There's a bit more life to it. But the theatrical cut also really slaps. It's much quicker, much easier to, manage, and it's not a bad movie in either version. The third film, I think it's a worse version than the theatrical cut, but at least for the, assembly cut, 40 more minutes of stuff and more thematically richer. It's a much more interesting film. Still no masterpiece, but interesting. And the fourth film, I think it's just kind of goofy because they only add like an extra minute, and mostly it's just like CGI bugs hitting a screen. It's really funny. I don't know, I kind of enjoyed that extended cut. It doesn't really affect the viewing experience like Alien 3 or Aliens does in terms of how it affects character and universe, but yeah. Like I said, this is why I don't really know if I've talked about extended cuts before, because there's so many different variations. Does it change how character motivations are, or does it just explain character motivations more? Does it set up things that are paid off later, but the payoff is what you think is just a thing that happens? Say with Touch of Evil, where so many things happen in the extended scenes that pay off later on, and you realize that, or maybe there's details that are established about a character, like how a character's relationship with another character, and in a later scene it's reiterated. But in the theatrical cut, that's them just telling you the first time. Just kind of exposition in its own right, But it's like, it's still appropriate, it's still phrased differently, it's not the same person saying the same thing, and it's still a different character, so to the audience it's the same detail, but there's enough difference to it where it's like, oh, this establishes here that they have this kind of respect for this person for this one action that they did, and this time they just say, oh, they just respect the person. They don't emphasize why, they just say that they do, So let me know your thoughts down below. Do you prefer extended or director's cuts or theatrical cuts or whatever? Do you have a favorite film that has a extended or director's cut that you like to watch over a theatrical cut? Or are you just short for time and you're like, fuck it, I've only got 100 minutes before I gotta leave, I'll just chuck on the 90-minute version of the film, and then if I really just hate myself, hey, at least I've watched the 90-minute version of the film, and I can watch the extended version next week, Let me know down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Adios.